Well, good day to you. Happy Valentine's Day. Dan Stein here with RJ Hauman, Affairs Government Relations Director. Glad to see you, glad to see you. Feeling good about Valentine's Day. You know, I've been married for like 33 years. I got a great wife, really fortunate. I'm feeling good. Not feeling quite so good though when I look at this compromise border security legislation. We'll put border security in quotes, and you're going to get the truth here from FAIR like you're not going to get anywhere else. So you want to open your ears and get your brain engaged and focus very closely on what we're going to tell you about what exactly President Trump got in exchange for a 5-week shutdown, the biggest in history, and the hard-nosed art of the deal negotiating. Now, this thing, what's known as HJ Resolution 31, this is the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which in its Senate version will be voted on likely today or tomorrow. This is not going to be pretty, how do I put this? It's not going to be a pretty picture if the White House tries to spin this as some kind of a victory. If you take a look at what the president got in exchange for his 55 miles of fencing, highly restricted, subject to all kinds of local political manipulation, control, and delay, a fraction of the money he asked for. The question ultimately is, what did he get that he could not have gotten last October? And to what extent does this package, taken in its entirety, advance the cause of immigration and border control or set it back? And with some of the answers here is RJ Hauman, as I said, Government Relations Director, who's been bird-dogging this bill. He was up all night, got the language right here, every word. And you know what the president has said? Didn't he say, RJ, I may not sign it if there are landmines? Well, let me tell you what. There are landmines, okay? The harbor is littered with landmines. If the ship of state goes into this harbor, we're going to see some major problems, and here to explain why is RJ. RJ, first tell us what's good about what we got here. What's good?
The only good thing is that, you know, the detention issue that came up over the weekend, where Democrats were trying to do a huge cut in detention space that allows us to detain illegal immigrants that we can then deport, isn't as bad as we thought. I mean, but that's the only redeeming quality here.
In other words, they didn't do something awful. They only did something lousy.
Correct.
Does that really qualify as good?
No, it's not.
I guess what I want to know is what is good, unalloyed, pure, total good?
There's nothing good in this thing. Let's look at where we are again. President Trump, when he
say that again.
There's nothing good in here
at all.
When President Trump said
he's signing this bill, holding his nose, saying there's nothing good.
He's not.
So there's nothing good.
He's not yet.
So, all right, so can you tell us, is there anything, don't tell us it wasn't as bad as it could have been, because apparently the Democrats seem to negotiate better than some other people we know. They start out by making crazy demands. They don't get the crazy demand, they just get the awful demand, and that's like a big victory, right?
Right. Well, just let's look back to what happened. I mean, President Trump claimed, you know, he goes, hey, I want a border wall, $25 billion the cost. That was his initial kind of offering. That's where he was about a year ago. And then Democrats said no. For some reason, Paul Ryan and Republican leadership at the time convinced the president, and I don't know why he listened to them, to wait on border wall funding. Oh, wait until after the election. Wait till after December. And then he's finally now into a new Congress controlled by Nancy Pelosi, and of course he's not going to get anything. But again, he went down from $25 billion. Then he went to ask for $5.7 billion. And then in these negotiations after the shutdown, he was at about 2.5. And now we end up at 1.3. So we went from asking for $25 billion to getting 1.3. That's a terrible deal. And at what cost?
Well,
at what
wait,
cost?
remember that 1.3 isn't a wall. Okay?
No, this is old fencing.
Our mug is still worth your time and effort to acquire, because we still need to get the mug.
This is old fencing that's been deployed previously. This is not the new prototypes that President Trump built. This is none of that. This is 55 miles of restricted fencing. And when I say restricted, because Democrats inserted a carve-out in there. They said 4 public lands can't be built on, and 1 state park can't be built on. And they also gave 5 cities veto authority. veto authority
over the design and the height, right?
Correct.
Basically, you can't build the fencing anywhere where an illegal alien might actually want to cross.
Correct. So they successfully, restricted this money. The president wanted funds that DHS, the real experts on the ground, could do whatever they want with it. That isn't the case here. But there's one main issue that if you've been following us on Twitter, social media today, we've been drawing attention to, is Democratic appropriators inserted a provision in there, I believe it's Section 224, which, to give a little background here first, I need to step back. Everybody knows that they're the unaccompanied alien minor crisis. The vast majority of a lot of people coming over here so they get to stay.
Let me slow you down. All right, what RJ is saying is that there's a landmine, a gremlin in this package that is significant enough that the president might want to consider vetoing this and shutting down the government again, okay? One of the major reasons why we see the caravans coming, the border crisis that we have now, is because a court settlement and a law that Dianne Feinstein wrote and Joe Biden helped pass creates an incentive for people to send unaccompanied minors and to have those minors trafficked into the U.S. Those people are then picked up by Health and Human Services and conveniently reunited with their parents, many of whom were here illegally.
Or relatives.
Or relatives at taxpayer expense. So essentially the government is facilitating the process of trafficking and smuggling alien minors into the country. And that's why you see these caravans. That's why people are showing up with parents or pseudo-parents who are actually traffickers, posing as parents, and the whole thing is a crisis. Now, you would think that in exchange for border security money, the president would want to try to ensure that he would retain his ability not only to detain people, right? Does this law actually make it easier to detain people?
No, it does not.
No, it makes it harder. It lowers the authorized budgeting for detention space because the Democrats want to sabotage immigration enforcement at every level, and they want to decrease authorized funding for detention space. There is some reprogramming ability.
Yeah, they can. The amount stays the same. The beds are 40,000, but they're going to make it hard for ICE to be able to get to 50,000 or so. They put a lot of onerous.
Because they'd rather see criminals released.
Correct.
On
There's
the
a lot of
street.
onerous reporting requirements. They're going to. If ICE wants to go above that cap, it's going to be very hard for them to do so.
Right. So on top of that, they added a provision in there that said that Health and Human Services, if they find a sponsor for an unaccompanied minor, basically there's a golden ticket, Midas touch. That unaccompanied minor's sponsors, relatives, spouse, parents, whatever, cannot be deported on the basis of information provided as a sponsor to HHS. Now what does that mean? In practice, that means they're not going to get the family unit isn't going to get deported.
Well, it's beyond
because the presumption falls on the government to disprove that the information came independently. Instead of saying, "Aha, you're all here illegally. You're all going to go into removal proceedings, parents and child," they all wind up getting to stay.
Well, what Dan said too, the sponsor. It's not just the sponsor in this language. It says the sponsor of a UAC, the potential sponsor of a UAC. I don't know what that means. You could say that every illegal immigrant that's up here right now is a potential sponsor of a UAC because we don't know who they have back at home. And also anybody who lives in a residence with a sponsor or potential sponsor. So again, you could have 8 people that live in a residence with that sponsor. They're exempt from enforcement now. I mean, this is a ridiculous thing to include in here. Something like this is only going to exacerbate the UAC crisis. And you could argue that the UAC is the one who is sponsoring the illegal immigrants up here in our country. They're giving them the ability to stay simply by crossing our border and being placed with them.
Listen to me closely. The President of the United States needs to shut down partially this government, shut it down until the Democratic Party stops trying to sabotage U.S. immigration controls and enforcement. That party is doing everything it can to sabotage this nation's ability in the interior, e-verify, worksite enforcement, interior apprehension, state and local cooperation. They're trying to starve immigration customs enforcement, starve DHS's ability to deport it, blow open massive holes in the asylum process, incentivize and reward illegal immigrants. And as somebody nicely commented on our Facebook page, thank you, Kamala Harris nodded disapproval when the president suggested we needed to try to stop human smuggling and trafficking during the State of the Union. The reason the president needs to not sign this package is very simple. He needs to send a very clear message to the Democrats that this extremist agenda of trying to sabotage this country's ability to control its borders, he has to draw a line. Because every time he negotiates with them, they're going to blow these holes in the process in ways that are undermining opportunities for Americans, our standard of living, the credibility of the rule of law. They are willing to sacrifice all of this stuff in this craven idea that by massively importing people, by whatever means necessary, they can consolidate political power with the next mass amnesty. There is no way to reason, and the president would be better off with the status quo and a continuing resolution and go ahead and try to find money to build the structure and build the wall by reprogramming funds from other sources to get it done over the next 4 years. And he's better off holding the Democrats accountable for their lack of cooperation and to sign something ludicrously styled a bipartisan compromise when all it does is give him a few miles of border fencing, bollard fencing, maybe, in exchange for a whole lot of stuff, capping detention, starving ICE, and taking away critical ability to stop exactly what's creating the incentive for people to bring caravans up to the country.
And just so
tell me where am I wrong?
You're 100% right.
I'm watching in my. If you think I'm wrong, tell me on Facebook.
And just so you know, that isn't the whole text. That's just a little summary we have. If we had the text, it's 1,000 pages. It's about that high, and it was released at 1 a.m. last night. In the middle of the night, the text was released. I think it's 1,100 pages or so, released in the middle of the night, and they're going to vote on it today. That's just Washington at its worst. This stuff was cooked up by this conference committee behind closed doors, just about 17 lawmakers from each chamber. And they're going to vote on it today. You know, you can't really, we've noted a couple things. We found a couple of these landmines, as Dan mentioned, but you can't really analyze legislation until you're out there. You can really comb through it. You can talk to the relevant parties that are drafting this thing and make an informed decision of whether or not to vote on it. They're doing it with a gun to their head today, and it's a real shame.
What's really a shame is that the Republicans, when they're negotiating, can't seem to deliver the effective controls that are so needed to make it easier for DHS and ICE to enforce the law.
And it's a real shame that Republicans, when Republicans had, I don't mean to say when Republicans had unified control of government, we had the House, we had the Senate.
Didn't get the job done.
They still didn't do it. They told the president, you know, that we're going to do it for you next time. We're going to do it for you next time. And guess what happened? They didn't get it done. Now we're sitting here negotiating with Speaker Pelosi.
So you need to contact the White House and tell them, please don't sign this. It sends the wrong message. The president does not want to look like a loser, okay? He wants to look like a winner. And the only way he's going to look like a winner is by holding the line on this. This is a swamp platter. Remember we talked about swamp platters in the past? Washington, the swamp. Well, this swamp platter came to us. RJ, we're looking at the frog legs, the alligator bites. We're checking it all out, and it stinks. It stinks. It's not the kind of compromise that represents a balanced objective of public policy. Nobody supports the idea of building this wall more strongly than fair. Effective controls at the border, effective controls at the interior require a balanced strategy to deter people from crossing. This compromise actually incentivizes people to try to get into the country illegally in exchange for a few miles of fencing. Is that a good deal? Mr. President, you promised us you could get the deal. Stop talking about increasing foreign workers. Get the job done that you promised the American people in 2016 before you get distracted with Jared Kushner on a bunch of sidebar issues. We need immigration controls. We need illegal immigration stopped. That's what you promised. That's what you're going to get from fair, nonstop work. Still want to get your mug. They're flying off the shelves. We've only got about 15 of these left, by the way. So if you want to grab yours now, this may be your last chance. RJ, anything else?
That's it.
All right, well, you all have been very nice to listen. Great comments. Build the wall, like we all agree. Going to have to work on this for some time through the next year. Let's hold them accountable and keep their feet to the fire. I'm Dan Stein. It's RJ Hauman. We'll see you soon.